All right, moving on. This is the video where we create our first NextJS application and connect it with the database. We'll be connecting with the Neon database, which sounds like a regular Postgres database, but it has a lot of bells and whistles. Neon is a serverless Postgres database, and it is so much different than the regular Postgres. But the fun part is it can act as a regular Postgres database. You will never come to know that, hey, these are all the extra features that it has. We're not here to talk much about the Neon in this particular video, but we'll learn about the connection. And by the way, if Neon guys are watching it or somebody can reach me out from the Neon, I'll link them up with me on the Twitter. I would love to work closely with them. These are awesome. So I would really always love to work with the people whose tech stack that I'm already using. Anyways, let's move forward and show you some architecture, and let's fire up our NextJS application, our VS Code. That's how things works. So let me share the screen. All right, so the application architecture that we want to work on is like this. We want to set up our backend. So our backend front end is all same Next.js. We have to inject some kind of ORM in between so that we can actually write SQL through the ORM and it can connect with the database. But before all of this, it's important that we go onto Next.js. You won't be seeing this by the time you're watching the video. Probably the tickets are gone. All we need is this simple command to work with the Next.js application. I'll go into here. This is the already folder where I'll be working with this. I'll say create next app latest. I'll just say, hey, let's just run through an application. What would be the project name? I would be calling this as a SaaS starter app. Yeah, sounds decent. TypeScript, yes, why not? Linting, yes, and Tailwind, yes. Source directory, no, I don't need that. App router, yes, and no, I don't want to customize anything, and this is the basics. In case you are worried and afraid about the TypeScript, don't worry, it's all okay. It will be all fine. You don't need to worry anything about it. As much as required for this application, I'll walk you through. TypeScript is just a superset of JavaScript. So end of the day, if you write even the plain vanilla JavaScript with the file named as TS, it will still work. But with the TypeScript, we get an additional safety of the types that we don't have in JavaScript. So you don't have to worry about anything. It will be under control. In the meantime, then it does all the stuff that it needs to do. Oh, that's almost fast. And some deprecation stuff as well. That is okay. And now let's just quickly do an ls, and we need to go into SaaS starter app and do a quick ls. All the files are up here. I can just go ahead and fire up my VS Code editor. And where are you? Where are you? Here it is. Got lost. And there we go. We can just expand this up, and there we go. So this is how the basic of the modern Next.js application looks like. Turns out the public folder is all gone. You have seen that, but hey, we were never using the public folder altogether. So it's there, it's gone, doesn't really bother us much. What we have is just one folder, which is app, and inside all the majority of the stuff happens. So nothing to be worried on that part. It's all okay. It's all under control. And that's it. That's all what we have. Now what we need to do next is connect with one of the ORM, and we'll have a small discussion on the ORM as well. And we'll also get fired up with the Neon. So again, the NeonDB is nice, and they provide you enough of the free tiers. So let me just go ahead and walk you through neon.tech. So if you go ahead and look at their pricing, this is what we need. A free plan which has one project and can just work with that. So starter just for free, just like that. And I'll just close this one so that you can just sign up. Go ahead and click on this. Should be super easy. And there we go. Click on this button and it does the job, majority of the job. And after that, since I can create only one project, I probably will buy a plan so that I can have multiple projects. And in this case, let's just go ahead and remove this. So I'll just go ahead and say, hey, let's just go to settings. I would love to delete it. Don't love to, but SaaS. And there we go. So this is how you see the very first project that is being generated. Again, there are a lot of options how and where you can deploy this. My project name is going to be SaaS-starter. Yeah, that's good. You can also pick up your Postgres version. I think 16 is good enough for me. The database name is going to be my SaaS. I can have multiple databases as well in this. I'll just go with the AWS, and you can pick up your region, whichever is closer to you. I guess I'm gonna go ahead and select Singapore would be a little nearer to me, and I'll just say create project. Now this takes just a couple of seconds. I'll just skip this. And there you go. Now all you got to do is you can actually connect it with the Postgres. You can connect it with the NextJS. It has the option and all the values that you can do with this. You can go ahead and have your Prisma connection just like this. Whole bunch of things are mentioned. The most important part for us, according to our setup, is just this Postgres. And as soon as you click on the copy snippet, it just copies everything. And you don't have to worry about these passwords. It copies that as well in the real character format. You don't have to worry and anything on that. Now another thing that comes up into our picture is what ORM we are going to choose. Now in this case, since I promised to you that I will show you the Prisma as well, that's why I went up and showed we'll be using the Prisma in this one. But there's another very popular ORM in this case, which is Drizzle. And on the very homepage of the Drizzle, you are going to see things like this, which is performance. Drizzle doesn't slow you down. If you look at the benchmark result, you are going to see that this is how the result actually looks like. And they show you the whole detail that how much latency is there, how much request per second it can handle, and how does it impact, what's the CPU load. So yeah, overall, they mentioned this. This is a bold move that you can mention your competition up front, and for all the good reasons. I will definitely very soon make more videos on Drizzle, and will show you that how Drizzle is these days the go-to solution as an ORM. But in this case, we're going to be using Prisma just for the sake of it, so I'll work with that. Again, go ahead and read more about it. And again, there are a lot of articles that you're going to see just like this. We migrated SQL. Don't use Prisma. So Prisma has some of the performance chunks which is known for the industry. Again, both of them are updating on the go. Drizzle is also updating. Prisma also updating. But turns out a lot of people are moving towards Drizzle, including me. We'll talk about them. So in this case, let's go with the Prisma, and NextJS, we're already here. So for Prisma, it's super easy. Go with the ORM and quick start. Ignore all these stuffs at the top. The first thing that you want to do is Prisma install as a dev dependency. So just go ahead and fire this up. We'll just go ahead and say, we could have used bun here as well. And make sure it's a -- save dev, because Prisma doesn't do anything in your application. It's a development dependency. It helps you to write some of the code. Once you are done with this, then you have to initialize it with the database provider. In this case, our database provider is actually not SQLite, but actually PostgreSQL. And once you do this, it initializes Prisma. And there we go. You are going to see a new folder which says Prisma. You are also going to see a .env file. This is where it expects that you will be pasting the database URL. So let's go back onto the Neon. Copy the snippet, come back here and just paste it up there. So this is all up here. By the time you'll be watching the video, I'll be deleting this one, so for sure. So go ahead and paste up your own. So this is what is required for this one. After that, you're going to notice the Prisma. This looks like this. This is colorless, and this actually goes like that. So the one thing that we have to do for this one is, I don't use Prisma much, so I don't have the extension. For this video's sake, I'll just install this. It actually makes a life a little bit easier. So you can just also install it for the sake of this video or this project, and then eventually you'll be moving on to the other Drizzle and all of that. So this looks a little bit more colorful now. So this is good part. Okay, so how does this work? Let's go on back to, not here, but definitely here. The next step is, once you have initialized, you want to write your models. Prisma has its own way of writing these models, and that's the interesting part. Prisma has a lot of clients to work with that. So this is not just the only client. So the client means, how does the Prisma work? The step one is you write all of your models here. Once you write the model, then you have to actually migrate these models into the database. And in case you have worked with like Django or something, yes, almost same like that. And then it provides you these provider. Prisma has a lot of providers which are generated based on your model so that you can get all the suggestions. And Prisma Client.js is one of them. There are many others available. So probably if we can just look for the providers, database providers. Yeah, it should be this one. So yeah, there are Prisma clients. So I've seen them. I've seen them. Probably not going to be seeing them up here, but yeah, rest assured there are lots of these providers being available to us. All right, the next thing is that it mentions that, hey, provider, you'll be using Postgres, and for the URL to find out about the database, I can go ahead and look up into the environment variables and work with that. So this is the basics. Now we need to go back into the part that, hey, how the clerk is going to inject with that. This is the part we already know. But we are on to this phase now, that NeonDB, we want to have a user, which eventually will come to us from the clerk, so be assured of that part. So we need a model for the user. Now, whatever the application you are building, that's your regular work. So go ahead and do that. In this case, we have chosen that we'll be using to-dos. So every user will have many of the to-dos to be injected. This is the basics. So let's just design a simple model for this one. So all you have to do is write model and then provide the model name just like this, and there we go. Now, in case of Prisma, the way how you do it is just write an ID. So this is going to be my unique identifier. And again, I need to turn this off and disable. All right, so that we can write it and talk about it. So the ID is the unique identifier that you can mention, just like you do that in any SQL database. I will just say, hey, this will be a string, and yep. And once this is the string, you have a lot of options to work with that. For example, you have ID to make it a uniquely identifier. You have the UUID as well. So come on, UUID. I think there is a UUID at the rate UU. There is a UUID. Again, in this case, I just worked with the ID. So that's where, again, I work majorly with the drizzle these days. You get the point. Then we will obviously be storing email into this one. So for the email, that's going to be a string. And for this also, we're going to say that, hey, this needs to be unique. So there are these constraints that you can add, just like you can add them in any SQL database. So these are nothing new. So unique. After that, we will be having is subscribed. So that user is subscribed to our services or not. This is going to be a super Boolean field. And we can also mention a default value into this one. So default, the value is going to be false. All right, we will also have a subscription ends. Yeah. This can be a simple date time field, but you can make it optional that, hey, whether this is there or not, it's not a compulsory field. It might be there, it might not be there, or it could be null as well. And apart from this, we will also be holding to-dos. Now this is going to be coming from another model, which is named as to-do. And a user model can hold multiple of the to-dos. So we'll be linking them up as a foreign key. But again, this is going to give you error because this model doesn't exist. So model will be having a to-do just like this. And there we go. Now this is complaining because you are saying that, hey, in this model, you are storing this this model here, so there should be some relationship being defined. And again, the easiest way to do so is say that, hey, I will be storing a user, which will be of type user. And now I can define a relation there. So I can just go ahead and say @relation. There we go. What's the relation between them? So again, just like in the SQL, we mention what field we are storing and what's the relationship between them. So right now we are not storing any field. So we have to first mention that I'm going to be storing a user ID, which will be storing a field of string like that. Once you have this user ID, then you can mention both the fields, like just like you do in the foreign key. So mention the field and mention the references. These are the two things you do. So in this case, I'll just go ahead and say the fields that I'm doing, and you can use multiple of them. I'm holding user ID. And what's the references? The references is in the users table, it will automatically know because you have mentioned users here. So it will go to the users table. And here you can find the same field user ID with the name of ID. So this is the basics of how it works. And again, this is complaining for at least one unique. OK, that's a different error. That's nothing to do with us. This is how models are actually interlinked with each other, just like in the SQL. Now every field is supposed to have a unique ID. So we'll just go ahead and say string, and that can be an ID just like this. And we can also go ahead and say @default is going to be, again, this is where you can mention the UUID or you can also mention the CUID. So this is a globally unique identifier, again, almost like UUID. All right, so this is the basics of it, but since it is a to-do, we need to add more fields so that later on we can come and add more values to it. So let's add some of the basics. So I'll just say, hey, this is going to be a title, which is going to be a string, and what else we need? Completed. That's also going to be a Boolean, and we'll also use a default as false. Nobody does the task by default. And let's also add created at, which is going to be a date time, and we can say default as now. There we go. Most of them are suggestions. Nobody remembers anything. Updated at, this is also going to be date time. This is going to be at updated. So whenever somebody updates that, it's going to work. Now the magic happens when I go ahead and save this. No, it doesn't happen. There is a way of formatting this as well. So let me just go ahead and search for this. I'm pretty sure there's this. Formatting the Prisma schema files. So there's a command known as Prisma format. I don't think so it's going to work like this. There should be an npx version of it. Let's at least copy this and see if it actually works. So npx and then Prisma format, and there we go. Nice, and formatting comes up. So this is the one thing that I love about it. You can also set this up on the save as well, so that it gives you all the nice formattings and tabs. So there we go. This is the basics of how Prisma works. So now that you know the basics of it, how the models are being delivered. So just it's an object, and create as many fields as you like. And you can provide these unique constraint to it. If you want to connect any table, just mention that, hey, I will be storing values from another table. So wherever you're storing it, just mention that in my table, the field will be known as user ID. And there also needs to be another field, which is user with any model that you are having. Mention that this is going to be type of user, and then mention the relationship. Relationship, whether you are working with SQL, classic SQL, or the Prisma, it requires always two fields. What field I'm expecting in my table to be appearing there, and what is the reference in the other table. The field that you are referencing is user ID, so I'm storing this user ID, and the user ID will be referenced as ID. So this automatically gives you all the constraints of the foreign key that you are expecting in a SQL databases. For example, the cascading effect, this will automatically comes to you. All right, a lot of fun stuff, but what next? Now go back. Okay, this part we have all done. You can refer to this. It's almost like that. We have just modified a little bit. After that, we have to migrate this database. We haven't pushed it yet. And are there way? Nope. We need to first migrate. Migrate is also an interesting command to look out at. Now notice here in the Prisma, you have just one file which is known as schema.prisma. If I go ahead and copy paste this, the new command that we have npx prisma migrate dev. So this all is happening in the development environment. I would also like to show you in the NeonDB that in the overview or in the tables, we have nothing. Nothing is here as of now. If I go back and I run this command as init, the name could be init, could be Superman, since it's the very first, so call it first, call it init, just like that. Now this is loading the environment and saying that, hey, the types and schemas and all of this takes a tiny bit of time. This is generating all the SQL for you through this file, that how the tables and everything will be created. Please don't take this much of time. Okay, all done. Your database is now in sync with your schema. All right, so we can just open this up and even open this up and look at the SQL. This is the fun part. So notice here it creates a table, classic SQL, with the ID, email is subscribed, all the fields that we are familiar with, timestamp, constraints, user, primary key is ID, so all these constraints are being added. Then we are creating a table to do. Notice here, I'm pretty sure you are aware of this, that all of the things. It also creates an index on user email key on the user email, adds a foreign key. So notice here, later on it alters the table that, hey, we are storing a foreign key, user ID, reference is user. So this is all basics. I've already taught you this. in the SQL portion of the course. So I don't think so we require much of this. Okay, now let's go back and hit refresh up here and see what's happening here. So we can see we have this to do here. We have the user here. So all these things are there. Now, a couple of interesting things. In this case, we actually worked with the command, which is this one. So we worked with this command migrate dev. Now, in case you are seeing that, hey, this is already being written and you want to just push it, turns out there is also a command for this. So you can just use Prisma and simply can say db push. And it will actually push all of these things to the database for the first time. But the better command is migrate, because if you are building the things on the go, then you can keep on migrating on top of it. That's one there. Now, coming up on to another command, which is required for us in this case, is somewhere here. npx Prisma Studio. No, I'm not looking for Studio yet. Give me a second. It's somewhere here. We want to have, come on, let me search that. And we want to, yeah, here it is, Prisma generate. So once the migration is being done, then the next step is to generate command. Why don't you give me the generate command? The generate command is responsible so that I can use Prisma on the client side of it. So whenever you want to write these queries like main or then Prisma disconnect, Prisma connect, all these connection things, if I want to query from the users like await Prisma user.create, I will be able to write all of this because this actually comes from the Prisma client itself. Prisma, come on, show me the command to, nope, you're not going to do that. Generate. And nope, it doesn't give you that. It's not that bad of a command, but I just wanted to show you in the docs. npx, or I can just write Prisma generate. And there we go. Oh, nope, this is definitely not that. Anyways, we can just run this. npx Prisma. And this command happens to fail sometimes. Sometimes you have to actually run this command 2 times. And what it does, it actually generates the client in the node modules at Prisma client. So this is the file and folder which you need to go, and you can just click on this. And this is the client that is generated to us on the go. And if you'll notice all these edge times and all of that, yeah, this is all the magic because we have mentioned that the provider I'm going to use is Prisma client provider. So this is the magic that comes up from here. Again, you will never actually open this up. Just wanted to show you that what's happening behind the scene. All right. So this is the part where we have generated the things, we have migrated the things, everything we are able to see in the database, and we won't be needing anything else much from this. If we'll need that, we'll figure out on the go. But anyways, you got the basic idea of how NeonDB actually works and how you can connect any ORM with that. That was the goal for this video. I hope you have enjoyed this. We'll keep it a little bit short. I hope this was enough of your crash course on Prisma as well as on the Neon. Again, there will be a lot of fun assignments after the end of this course. Like one of them will be surely migrate this whole SaaS application onto Drizzle. And yes, I'll be mentioning them as well. So stay tuned. And again, don't forget to show your love in the comment section. I really need that. That's it for this video. Let's catch up in the next one. Oops, I almost missed this, but then I realized, hey, I cannot just get away with that. So we have worked with the Prisma and how to write the models and send it all the information of creation of tables into Postgres. But we need to connect with database as well from our NextJS application. And this is kind of a messy in the Prisma documentation, but I'll show you an easier way to find them up. And let's go ahead and get started with this one. So it turns out one more thing that we have to do here is figure out the way that how we are going to connect with the Prisma in our application. And turns out there are different ways of connecting with the Prisma. Since it's an ORM layer, it can be in the NextJS application, it can be an Express application in the Next application as well. There's a lot of ways. So if you go ahead and look at the right, this side of here. So again, this is little, so I hope you can see them now. So what you're going to notice that this is the schema part. Then comes is the Prisma client. And if you go ahead and look at the introduction, this is where they mention that how it works, what all the things goes on with that setups and configuration, and generating the Prisma client, the command that I was hunting for just a minute ago. Yeah, this is exactly there. So notice here Prisma generate. Yeah, that's the same command we were looking up for. And this is where it gives you the illustration that, hey, whenever you generate that, it adds this Prisma modules in the NPM, and then you can just use them here. Now, the interesting part is, how am I going to connect with my database? So there's a section in the database connection here, and it says connection management. So, okay, I can just go ahead and say const Prisma, new Prisma client. That's great, but it doesn't work the way you expect them to work in the Next.js application especially. And then you have to also work with how the disconnection will happen. So this is the part where actually you can just connect it. Awesome. And then you have to work with the disconnection part as well. And this is not all. There's a lot more things that you have to go through with this. And again, there is nothing that tells you exactly that. Turns out somewhere in the documentation, it's a little hard to find again. There is also a mention of their GitHub repository where they mention Prisma example with different of applications that they are working on. So this one is an example for REST Next.js API routes. That's what we want to use. But again, there is an example for Happy, there is for Fastify, Express, Remix. So they have given you the GitHub repo for all of this. If you'll just search for this Prisma example, it's easier to find. And this is how we are supposed to just work with the Prisma to have all of this application. I'll walk you through with all of this code one by one so that we can just learn and understand this. And again, you can feel free to copy this. People reuse this code quite a lot. All right. So what we're going to do is just outside of this app, we are going to go ahead and create a new folder. This will be used in other application as well, lib. And inside this lib, we'll create a simple connection file. We'll import that again. So prisma.ts, since we are using TypeScript. The only additional thing that comes up here is the type safety. Apart from that, nothing more is important. So the first thing that we have to do is import the Prisma client. There we go. This comes from the Prisma client. Again, we don't need extension. You also go ahead and please remove this. This is also exactly mentioned up here as well that, hey, go ahead and import this. We are not doing again anything much on that. Now, the most important thing is we want to have one connection at the time. If you remember, or if you know, Next.js is one such application which runs on serverless, or which runs on the edge. And every request that you make from the route, that goes from the edge itself. And there could be multiple of these edges which might be making a connection to your database at the same time. So it's your job that you, from at least one edge request, if there's already a connection, you just don't create infinite number of other connections, you just use that connection. So we need a singleton pattern to work in here. So for that, again, if the connection already exists, just use that, otherwise create a new one. That's the whole idea behind that. So we're going to call this one as Prisma. And let's just call this as client. Since this is known as moreover like a singleton pattern, again, feel free to call it whatever you like, doesn't really matter. And here, whenever somebody makes a request of this particular method, our whole job is to return a new Prisma instance to it, which is Prisma client that we have just imported. Again, it's just a method which gives you a new instance of the Prisma. And we use it very, very safely. For example, we're going to create a variable, and again, I'm not making this name up here. This is known as global for Prisma. The whole idea behind this global for Prisma is at a global level, whenever we need, we can just look for this, whether you have an instance of the connection or you don't have. They also exactly mention this. So const global for Prisma, whether it's available or it's not available. That's what you look up for. So we're going to be working with exactly the same. And in fact, we can just go ahead and copy this whole thing. We don't need to worry on that part. And we can just copy and paste this. So this is, again, the same stuff, global. We can actually call this one, instead of global, let's call this as global this, which will make much more sense. So this is like a this reference. We are providing a context of it. So this as unknown as, again, this is a weird terminology with this. But again, this could be a Prisma client, But the whole idea is, again, remember, there could be an existing connection or there could not be an existing connection. So the return in this global for Prisma or global this for Prisma could be a Prisma client, just could be like that. Or you can just go ahead and say this could be undefined. Yep, there is also a case. Now I will also go ahead and define the type of this Prisma singleton as well, that it could be a return type. I'll walk you through with that TypeScript part as well, but this is the basics. And they also mention this. And yeah, so notice here, Prisma client is attached to global object in the development to prevent exhausting your database connection limit. This global is known as global this. That's why I've explicitly mentioned this up here. Now, once we have this, so what we can do is the next line is simply go ahead and create a const Prisma global this Prisma, or basically what this piece of code is doing. And again, global for Prisma, again, looks good. And this one is we don't have a Prisma client directly being taken up here. We are actually taking it from a singleton class, just like this. So just work with this. And we don't need to use it like this. Again, TypeScript, classic TypeScript. I'm very soon going to plan. I do have a TypeScript series on my channel. Go ahead and try and watch that. So basically what we are doing here is that either from this global this, so this one, we are going to go ahead and grab a Prisma instance so that we can have a connection with the database. If that doesn't exist, then we are going to go ahead and request this method that, hey, give me a new Prisma client instance. And what you see there is directly an invocation of this Prisma directly here. What we are doing here is kind of using a method to invoke this. Again, not a big difference in this case, but I find this one as much more explanatory in this case. And then I can just go ahead and say export default, and I can just export the Prisma. There we go. And this is what you're going to see up here. So they are exporting in the same line. I prefer to do it in the separate line. Now, apart from this, they also mentioned that, hey, how we're going to work in the production environment. So let's just go ahead and copy this. And we're going to copy this. And after that, we can paste it. So if the environment is not production, then global this for Prisma is Prisma. Again, a boilerplate code, nothing big of a deal. Again, I really thank that they do have these kinds of libraries. Otherwise, it would be impossible for me to dig up into the documentation and find that, okay, this is how you go ahead and connect with the client. It would be so hard. But once you have designed this, now in any of my application, I can just refer to this file and can say, hey, import Prisma from this file. And I do have a connection with this. Once I have the connection, I can just go back and run this like queries. So if you want to make any query and you want to perform the CRUD, so this is what we can do. Once you have imported this Prisma, I can refer to any of my table. So for example, in this case, to-dos, and I can use create. All these methods that are given to me, I can use that. So create is there, or there are more as well. Create many. So all these methods, I can go ahead and use this. But finding this is in itself really challenging. So if you're using REST Express, what you're going to notice, if you open this up, there's a source folder. And inside the Prisma, nope, there's nothing. So inside this one, if I go, and they should be using it. So there we go. This is the Prisma that they have worked with this. So they are using the Prisma client. And somewhere there might be connecting with it. Again, you have to hunt into this, that how they are connecting one. Again, luckily for me, it was all up here in the NextJS application. So if you're using API route, with the auth is not the one that we are looking up for. Whew, again, a lot of stuff, but rest assured that, yeah, we're finally done with the Prisma and we can work this. Now, one more thing that we can do if you wish to, again, it is not required as such, is define the type safety here. This is a bit of a TypeScript thing. You can avoid it altogether, but I would have it. So I'll say that, hey, I am having this Prisma client singleton, and I want to define that, hey, whenever you call this object or this object is being used, I would love to mention the return type of it. There we go, return type. And this is how you mention type of, and then you can mention that this is going to be type of Prisma client singleton. And again, this is not going to make sense to you as of now, that what is happening in here, and in this short tutorial I cannot explain you much of the TypeScript. But rest assured, what it's saying is whenever you are actually using the Prisma singleton, the type of object we are expecting is the Prisma singleton type. So this is how the value should be created, not directly with the new Prisma client. Again, if you're using directly new Prisma client, that is also okay. Nothing bad in that. Don't want to go into the TypeScript much detail, but yeah, rest assured that it's a little complex. But again, nothing to worry. You can just use this file anytime you're using Prisma, just copy paste this. Everybody does that, and people actually bring it from their own GitHub repo as well. All right, so I guess that is it. And let's move on to the next video now, finally.